the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Catholic. This is Marianela Nunez, and with me today again is my colleague, Mike Bress. How are you?
Good. How are you, Marianela? Happy New Year. This is officially,
Happy New Year.
Officially the first time we're recording in the new year. So,
can you believe it's 2024?
No, I don't necessarily want to talk about that, but yeah, no, it's incredible. It's, I think about every year when you see the year, come up in this time of this, the year that, like, it's incredible to be in 2024. When you thought as like a kid.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I was going to ask you, like, did you ever, kid when it was 2020, Well,
I'll put my personal gripe out there that probably a lot of people have. I was a big fan of all of the Back to the Future movies, which I don't know if you've seen, so I'll explain a little bit.
Okay.
In one of them, the whole idea is about time travel. And in one of them, they head to 2015, I believe. In fact, I think it was October 22nd, 2015. So
wow, what a memory.
Nerd
Look
alert
at
on
that, people.
But they had flying cars. They had flying skateboards. A lot of cool clothing, shoes they didn't need to tie, jackets that could like dry themselves. It was a lot of really cool technology, and we've gotten none of it.
Yeah, so, that's disappointing.
Yeah, and we're almost 10 years past that date, and I'm just a little upset about all of that.
But we do have some cool technology.
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of it actually was inspired, some of it's been inspired by those movies or movies like that. But I always think about that, like when these movies go farther into the future, hey, is it going to are we going to get close to that? And I don't think...
I always think of like what our next generation is going to be doing, many years from now, and what they are going to come up with, and what we're going to say. It's going to be like, wow, we never thought about that, in the past.
Right, yeah. So my only hope is at some point my children or my grandchildren get a hoverboard, and then I'll be happy, because that was the flying skateboard in Back to the Future. So maybe we'll take a meeting and have you be able to watch some of those pop culture movies, and you can join me in your anger that we don't have these great things.
As my cultural mentor, you have to do your job, Mike.
Yes, so that's going to be on the agenda. But yeah, right. It's an exciting time. Obviously, we work. We can tell the listeners we work on a school year calendar, which is September to June, and that's always a little funny because the new year, the calendar year, falls right in between that. So it's always funny to say the new year, because we kind of deal with both.
We have two different new years.
We have two different years, and so it's an exciting time
within schools.
Yes, right. It's a very exciting time within schools, as well as we hit sort of everyone comes back from break, and we sort of head towards June, really. I mean, we really start to get heavy. I mean, I know in your world it's enrollment season, both re-enrollment and new enrollment season, so that's exciting.
Yes, it's kind of like, at this time of the year, I'm counting numbers and seeing who's coming back, and, just kind of like grateful to see how our families continue to select our schools to come back every year. So it's good to see.
It is great to see, and we'll talk about it a little bit with our guests coming up, but we've got an exciting time at the end of the month, because it is officially, I think they call it Celebrate Catholic Schools Week now, but it's always traditionally been Catholic Schools Week, and it's right at the end of the month, January 28th, I believe, is that Sunday that starts, and it goes Sunday to Saturday. It's a full week. And it's a full week of fun activities, and you'll be able to see stuff on our socials and our website as it comes along. But that's sort of where I am in the planning, times and the craziness, getting myself geared up to travel to all the schools, see the events. But a lot of it is to try to help enrollment, right? And get people excited. Those who are not already excited about Catholic education to be excited about it, and hopefully get some new families enrolled. So that'll be fun.
That's the goal. All right. So I'm very excited today. And actually, I think everyone in our office is excited because we have a new team member in the Office of Catholic Education. And I am pleased to introduce you Dr. Sarah Kerins, who is the new Assistant Superintendent for School Services in the Office of Catholic Education. Sarah brings a wealth of experience to the position, having served as a Title I teacher, middle school math and religion teacher, and middle states co-chair in the Diocese of Allentown. She was also principal of 2 Catholic schools in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia and director of marketing and enrollment in the Diocese of Allentown. She's also a part-time of the Partners in Mission team, consulting on school management for Catholic schools nationwide. So look at that resume, and that's just a little bit, people. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Marianela. It's wonderful to join you on Talking Catholic as my new colleagues. You make me sound really incredible. I don't think
You are.
I am exhausted just hearing that bio. That's incredible. So we've got a lot to talk about. You can feel free to start wherever you want on that.
Well, it's kind of like, so neat to have a full team in the Office of Catholic Education right now. And Sarah brings a wealth of knowledge to us, and kind of like, I'm very excited to start here and start contributing to the Diocese of Camden. So we're very pleased to have you, Sarah. I just want to ask you to get started in this conversation. What brought you to the Diocese of Camden?
Well, I told my husband that we live smack in the middle of 5 dioceses. So if I work for all 5, I get bingo.
Oh, yeah.
But, when they say when you've seen one Catholic diocese, you've seen one Catholic diocese. And I think that's very true. Allentown is very different from Philadelphia, which is very different from Camden. And the opportunity here was just incredible. This team is really impressive, and I've been watching it from across the river. And when the opportunity came, I said, you know what, I think I want to call Camden home, and so I'm here.
Wow.
That's great. Well, I think some of our friends on the podcast would be very surprised that you said everyone's impressive on our team, but I won't call anybody out, probably me. But no, that's, we're excited to have you. And, this role has been vacant for just a short period of time.
Yes.
But the impact, I think has been felt. And so being able to have someone in the role has been exciting. And someone who has experience like yourself. I mean, we joked about the bio, but I think this position in particular really needs that experience from the school level all the way up, having already worked, for another diocese, and being a team member and understanding what the schools need, especially on that level.
So in this podcast today, we're going to be talking to Sarah about her experience, as well as what this role in the Office of Catholic Education entails, and getting to know her a little bit, so that you guys can say hi when you see her and kind of like feel like you know her a little bit.
Yeah, and quiz her on whatever we asked on the podcast.
All right. That way you'll know that people are listening to the podcast, Sarah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, every time we have a Catholic educator, we kind of ask the question of, being a professional and, going to school for the different degrees that you're on. And we're going to be talking a little bit about those later on. What made you become part of the Catholic world? Like, why Catholic work in your life?
It's a great question and a great place to start. And a lot of people are surprised to find out that I didn't go to Catholic school myself.
Interview's over.
No, I was publicly educated, and I got a great education. I will say I was blessed in the way that my parents really took their role and responsibility as our primary educators in the faith. And so actually, my dad didn't become Catholic officially till I was a senior in high school, but he raised us Catholic, and my mom was significant influence in my spiritual life. I think she made faith very real and very practical and applicable in every real life context. And I think that's why it stuck with me. But when I became a teacher, all through college, I was actually coaching at athletics I coached at 2 different public high schools. And I was encountering kids who were really suffering, for different family reasons. And I was finding it very difficult to talk to them without talking about faith. And I started to get in a little bit of trouble for sharing my faith at times. And I think that was when I said, I need to consider working in a place where I can talk openly about faith, because it just permeates everything about my life, and especially in education. It's part of the formation of the whole person, and how do you separate that? And I was just really struggling with how to separate that. I did teach 1 year in the public school system, and I graduated in a time in Pennsylvania where they were just so flush with teachers that it was impossible to find a job coming out of college. Which is totally different now. Teacher certifications in Pennsylvania are down 75%, so totally different time. But I couldn't get in to the Catholic schools, believe it or not. Wow. And when I looked back at the data in the Diocese of Allentown, where I was living at the time, I think they hired like 4 or 5 teachers that year across the whole system.
Wow.
So it was just, it was really a challenging time there. But by about 6 months into my time in the public school, which was a wonderful community, I want to preface it with that, but it wasn't where I was called to be. And so I was just like miserable by January. And so I started applying to Catholic schools and got some pressure from people who love me saying, Sarah, you're not going to have a good pension. You're not going to have all the perks that a public school teacher gets, and the salary is a big difference. And I said, yeah, but I'm not where God is calling me to be. And so I got a job at Sacred Heart School in West Reading, which is part of the Diocese of Allentown, and had a wonderful principal, Kathy Napolitano. She was just, we just connected on so many levels, but she also was a fabulous leader and beloved in the community. I taught her youngest son, so imagine being a first-year teacher and teaching your principal's kid.
Wow.
Fortunately,
you didn't need an evaluation, right?
Yeah.
Well, he turned out to be I think a senior director of human resources for Nike, so he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I couldn't have messed him up too bad in 7th and 8th grade, but Kathy was a phenomenal mentor, and she recognized leadership skills in me early on and really mentored that. And after 7 years teaching there and the 1 year in the public school, I was ready to step into leadership. And again, not a lot of leadership positions open in the Catholic schools at the time in close proximity. So I ended up crossing lines and went to St. Aloysius in Pottstown, which was right over the border into Montgomery County, so part of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And I think it's important when we talk about Catholic education to talk about people, because the people are part of the journey and they're what brings us closer to Christ. When we think about Catholic education, the purpose being salvation, to bring souls to Jesus. It doesn't happen through a program or a curriculum. It happens through relationships. And I met some really, really wonderful people at St. Aloysius, and we did some great things in the 4 years that I was there. I had a music teacher. Her name was Kim Slowacki. I've never met anybody who teaches music like her. She could take a group of kids who didn't have any formal vocal training, but just wanted to sing and make them sound like they all belonged on Broadway. And so she was doing wonderful concerts. I mean, the kids were singing in 5-part harmonies. I've never seen anything like it. And so I said to her, why don't we try this? Why don't we try musical theater? And pushed her a little bit. And we did. And we ended up, one of my favorite shows was The Lion King. And the kids did The Lion King Jr. And with this musical theater program, we watched some kids it be life transforming for them.
Wow.
They found music. They were respected differently by the student body because they were able to put their talents on display in a way that they never could before. And they gained a whole lot of notoriety in the community for this impressive musical theater program. And also another person I want to mention who I think was significant in contributing to my formation in leadership was a woman named Romana Casilla. And she was, I would say, the unofficial chaplain among the faculty. We had of course, our pastor was very involved in the spiritual life of the school, but Romana, in a very special way, was always leading prayer. And when someone was sick and suffering, she was the first one to say, let's lay hands on this person and pray for them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And the tradition of that school was very steep. Were there things that we could do better? Yes, there were, and that was part of that 4-year journey. But a lot of deep 100-year tradition, and the community was very proud of their school. And the school actually ended up moving facilities out of the original 1909 building. They bought the Catholic, with the help of the Catholic Foundation in Chester County. They bought the old Pius X High School and have since relocated the school there. And what a beautiful opportunity for them. And I can see that they're just growing and thriving. And then from there, we moved actually to Chester County, and I became principal of Pope John Paul II Regional Catholic Elementary School, as probably the longest name in Catholic school history. But the school, it was an interesting community. It was the regionalization of 3 little elementary schools. However, they actually regionalized in 1971 before regionalization was cool.
Yeah.
And And they maintained those 3 campuses. They were like the old Catholic schools where you had 4 classrooms at one time, was first and second grade in one room where you had 75 kids and a nun who was 19, and no security.
Yeah,
The kids talk, the alumni still talk about how they were answering the door. There was no like
buzzer or
nothing
the
like
doorbell
these
rang
days,
and
right?
somebody answered it. And then the school actually rebuilt, finally. It was the dream of the community, I think from the mid-90s were the documents I found. And the dream of the community was to rebuild that school, and they rebuilt it on what was actually cemetery land that the Archdiocese owned. And they actually redrew boundaries and moved one of the parishes there. And that parish is St. Peter's, which is where I'm a parishioner. And Father Fitzpatrick has just so much vision. He was so visionary, I think, in jumping in on that project and saying, yeah, this will be beneficial to our parish. It will grow our community. And the parish has grown. I mean, leaps and bounds. It's huge. Last year, that parish registered 100 new families. Wow. So it's just growing and growing and growing. And the school, the same. And I had a wonderful vice principal who actually had been a principal in the Allentown Diocese. So we came together, and I always say we kind of co-principled and split up responsibilities and had very different strengths. She also had a real strength in early childhood education. So when we were looking at with this unique school model that had a very different parish subsidy model, our parish subsidy was only 8%. It was, we've got a very small amount of support considering all the other Catholic schools. I think maybe get a little bit more, but that was actually the magic of the model. It was to be more independent financially and not put a strain on the parish resources. So we had to really find other streams of revenue, and in her experience with early childhood, we looked at another school as a model and said, let's open a child care center. And so we opened this child care center, starting with babies from 6 weeks old.
Ooh.
And you got
Marianela's wheels turning now.
One of our alum, who is now a recruit for Notre Dame football program, we had him hold one of the babies. We did this like handprint thing with the littlest baby and his handprint, which was massive.
Right,
And I think that is still hanging outside the door of the child care. But yeah, Peter, fabulous. And so that was a tremendous learning experience because it was kind of an experimental model of a school in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. It owned its own land. We paid our own mortgage. It wasn't on parish property. So very different. A little bit, it probably operationally functioned a little bit more like a high school did. And then in the middle of 2020, end of 2021 calendar year, but middle of that school year, an opportunity to return to the Allentown Diocese came, and I ended up taking the Director of Marketing and Enrollment position for the Diocese of Allentown. As a school administrator, I found I really loved like the business side of education and the marketing and the enrollment. It was very that kind of creative outlet, I suppose. Yeah. And I had an affinity for it and would go to the Partners Mission conferences with Larry Fury and his team. And and that's where I actually met Marianela the first time. So, yeah. Really, that was a lot of fun. And so I was able to really like consult and support schools with their marketing enrollment initiatives, as well as do some diocesan level marketing, and met some really fabulous people along the way. I worked for a long time Superintendent Phil Fromuth, who was in the role for 21 years, which is pretty unusual in a superintendency. And, I think the thing I learned from him especially is just servant leadership. His favorite saint was St. John Newman. And truly, I feel like his leadership style, mirrored what St. John Newman, what he would embrace as leadership. And also, it was the assistant superintendent, Dr. Emily Kleintop. And first of all, she's probably the smartest person I've ever met. She's just wonderful, but also has a heart for the poor and a heart for those who are underserved, and a heart for the Hispanic community. She was an urban education. And I think, I served in schools that were middle class, and she served in a school that had a lot of poverty, and as a principal. And I learned a lot from her about the differences and the challenges financially running a school, in an urban setting. but also, I mean, her passion is also curriculum and instruction, and certainly it's an area that I love. I'm an educator by trade, so that's what I also love, but I've learned so much from her. And so now in this new role, having government programs, the government programs piece, I wouldn't have been able to do that without her mentorship previously. So I was really grateful to have that experience and work with so many of the wonderful people in the Diocese of Allentown, Bishop Schlert. And but now here I am in Camden.
Yeah.
What an incredible story.
Yeah. And there's so many questions from that, and I'm sure we'll get, but just that last point of, having that background in education and then going into the business side of stuff. And we've in your short time here that we've thrown a lot of things at you. Anytime there's someone new, we're like, bounce off ideas, but what's interesting is that leap to it, and we've talked about sort of like, that's what I like, is the business side and the uniqueness of each school and the challenge of helping each school do their work, but then jumping into that other experience that's sort of different than the previous one, and having those mentors. I think our staff has that too. I mean, I walk in as the person with the least amount of experience in education. I'm married to a teacher, a father who was a teacher, so I know of education, but understanding curriculum, understanding the government programs, what that means, and your predecessor would work with me on trying to advertise those things. And that was learning that helped me, understand the struggles better. So it's just so fascinating and, motivating to hear that you had that similar experience, that you don't necessarily have to have that degree, right? Sometimes it's about experience and what you can bring to it. I want to go back, because I think in the bio it said religion and math teacher at some point. Yeah. So those two things seem very far away in my mind.
But they're not, because we're Catholic schools.
Absolutely.
Remember that, Mike.
That I can absolutely conceptualize. But how was that for you in terms of, I think it takes two brains, or two sides of your brain to understand sort of the analytical, in math, and there's a plus B equals C to the spiritual and faith and things that aren't necessarily right in front of you. So how did you work through that,
Well, I think it was more or less, I really wanted a job at this Catholic school, and actually my background was early literacy in college. So I always say I talked my way into this algebra job. Like, I was teaching the highest level of math you have in a Catholic school, which was honors algebra 1.
You must be good, Sarah.
I just taught myself. It was a very painful first year, and the kids probably knew more than I did. But really, when you look at like mathematics and faith, logic and reason is so much a part of our faith. Our faith is, embraces the natural law, we call it, natural order, which comes from God. And so actually those two things are very easy to reconcile, because the logic and reason part of mathematics is so intertwined with the natural order of the universe. And God, our creator, who created it that way.
Yeah, so sold me on it. That was an easy answer to that question.
Beautiful answer. Dr. Sarah Kerins here with us, people.
Took me only 2 seconds to start believing that. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. So what are you excited about with this new role in the Diocese of Camden? Like, when you saw the opportunity come in, and you kind of like visualize yourself working in another team, and like, being in this role as an assistant superintendent of school services, what excited you the most?
I'm passionate about Catholic school wherever it happens, and Catholic education, because I think watching the journey of my own 2 children receiving a Catholic education, and my daughter actually starting when she was 6 months old, because she was in our childcare. I mean, she was making the sign of the cross, at 1.5, and before they have their little snack. It was like, it was just so great. I mean, she's been immersed in it, and my son, and he asks fantastic questions. I think he goes to Bishop Shanahan High School and has really great mentors. I think that was the thing. If I could point back to my public school experience as a student, I craved Catholic mentors, and I would seek out teachers. Believe it or not, we had a pretty strong Catholic community, and there were teachers in our high school that did attend our parish, so that was somewhat helpful. Not too many, but And so I'm so grateful for that opportunity and for my kids. But, here in the Diocese of Camden, what am I most excited about? I don't know, all of it. Supporting schools. I'm anxious to see. New Jersey is a different state than Pennsylvania in terms of it's a little less school choice friendly, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
And so how does that impact the running and the finances of the Catholic school? How does that impact opportunities for students who don't have the financial means on their own to attend? And just, learning a new approach to curriculum and on all of the things that go with that. But getting to work with the team, I think, is the thing I'm most excited about. I'm really so impressed with not just the expertise, but just the mission and direction of the team here in the Diocese of Camden. And Dr. Watson, I think, provides excellent leadership. The thing I've noticed in a short amount of time with him is that he just approaches everything from the what is best from the student for the student, and how can he best support the school in supporting the student, and that's spot on. So that's really exciting. And Dr. Lockwood, also just another really phenomenal guy with a lot of experience. And so I think, of course, the both of you and Lee and her religious formation, I'm really impressed with what I see there. So there's just so much. I'm here to learn, I think, mostly. Yeah. Like, I'm mostly excited about the learning opportunity and sort of rounding out my experience. The things I'm going to be doing are things that are going to challenge me, and I like the challenge. So I think that's what I'm most excited about now.
Yeah, and I will say, you talking about your former superintendent and his, the inspiration of St. John Newman, and I think about similarly in a way, but how Dr. Watson, has always talked to us about being very service oriented in our work, and being there for the schools. We're not
compliance officers, right? But we are a service, to schools.
Dr. Lockwood always likes to make the joke that the scariest thing for a school to hear is, "Hi, I'm from the diocese and I'm here to help."
But we are people.
But we are, but I think we in this diocese have that and receive that from our schools, and I think they welcome the assistance, they like the collaboration element, but at the same time, I think I was told this when I first started, and I'm sure Marianela was told this similarly, but it takes that first 6 months to a year to go and see the schools and learn about some of the things.
Relationships.
You're going to do the work every day, right? I mean, I walked in and I remember after a couple of weeks just saying to Dr. Watson, I'm not going to probably create anything new in these first few months, in terms of like make any huge changes. I'm always going to do our social media and I'm going to learn stuff, but I'm not going to make big deal, because I think that I need to learn first. And he was, he said, get to the schools, interview the principals, interview the advancement directors, see that, be there firsthand for it. So, I applaud that. And I think you're coming with great experience, and we have a team that supports each other, but supports our schools, which is great. You mentioned, having your kids in Catholic education, and all three of us around this table do, which is exciting, but I'm a product of Catholic school, but finished in public school. And I remember sort of that, realization, and could spot the differences pretty quickly, and not always the same stuff, right? Okay. Yeah. They don't wear uniforms, or, we don't go to mass. Those were the easy things, but it was just, there were some differences that I always noticed and would come in and talk about. Have you seen some differences in what, you had a great education, which my public school education was great, but you see with your kids now, and you've mentioned the faith part, are there other things that you've noticed of the everyday stuff for your kids that, were different from what you had growing up, not just generationally, but, from a school perspective?
I think it's even hard to compare. When I think back to when I was growing up, our community was mostly Christian,
sure,
even if nominally so.
Yeah.
And we've seen with the recent generation a rapid decline in Christianity in general, and a rise of the nuns, as they call them. And so, as in N-O-N-E.
Yeah, right. I don't have one yet.
Right. And I think you can't even compare the two generations, because I would say the community in where I went to public school generally had a shared value system.
Okay.
I think that's, that value system has shifted quite a bit. Where our shared values, you might say, well, respect. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
I think religious liberty in schools is hard for kids. And I would say that was even hard for me. I didn't feel like I could express my faith in a way that was socially acceptable among my peers.
Right.
I think that the challenges in the public school system are not always the fault of the public school system as much as they are cultural.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
We're just a different. We're changed. Our country has changed.
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to Christian values, and so because it's hard to say to a outraged parent who's becomes maybe abusive in the office, that they have to follow a certain cultural, or I want to say moral norm, and those aren't my morals.
Right.
And so you're up against that all the time. And I think probably the cultural shifts are the biggest challenge in public education in terms of educating a population that doesn't have a shared set of values.
Yeah.
And so in the Catholic school, why am I so grateful to have my kids in Catholic school? Well, I mean, they're immersed in Catholic culture, and I don't believe as a parent that I've heard parents say, well, the kids have to learn to live in the real world, and putting them in school, they can evangelize to other kids. I think that's a lot to put on a 7-year-old.
I would
or
agree.
even a 15-year-old who's really, we all know that that teenagers struggle with identity and their formation of their identity at that age. So having them in a place where it's constantly reinforced that their identity is in Christ is really important. But also there are Catholic schools, and then there are Catholic schools who are true to their Catholic identity. So making sure that my child was in a Catholic school that was true to its Catholic identity was really important, because otherwise those differences don't matter then so much.
Yeah. You also, in your role are going to be doing, you're going to be addressing students' concerns and parents' concerns. And I would love to ask you, what should parents expect when they call to our office in terms of, managing, those concerns, or, maybe complaints at some point, that you're going to get?
Yeah, I think
I know it's a tough one.
It's a tough question to answer.
I thought my question was tougher, and then
it depends. I think it depends, of course, on the issue.
Yeah.
But most times for parents, first of all, their primary concern is their child, and when their child comes home upset about something, as parents, it pulls at your heartstrings, and you're like, well, what do we have to do to fix this? And we're kind of also in a time where parents are more reluctant to let kids sort of fight their own battles, and there's not always that line where what is the learning versus when do I as a parent need to step in.
Sure.
Right.
And some parents get that line really well, and other parents don't. And so, part of my job is to be the third party observer, I guess, and to say, I understand where the school is coming from, and try to explain it to the parent, or to step in and say to the school, how can I support you to meet the student's needs,
right,
or address this issue? And perhaps bring a different idea to the table that we haven't thought of.
Yes.
Or a different resource, or a different strategy. We know whatever it is that the school needs to support the student, because ultimately that's really what it's about. It's hard. It's really hard raising kids in this day and age. And I think sometimes as a parent, when your kid misbehaves at school, it feels like it's a reflection on you.
Yeah.
And so it can draw a certain set of emotions. Sometimes that drive
nature, it
can make you defensive. Like my kid, I don't raise my kid to be that way. They would never do that. But in reality, you're thinking in the back of your head, yeah, they probably did do that.
I actually know what show he's watching, and that's where he got it from, or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that goes into that going into my question that morphed into Marianela's, in that, there's the shared values that we hope we all have as both parents and as administrators and of the school, and where you would come in and we can kind of start there, hopefully, in the faith part. It's not always going to be the case. Sometimes it's grades, sometimes it's technical stuff. But I always think what our schools bring, and what it sounds like you'll bring to the position too, is listening as well, right? That first, let's get it out all on the table. Let's see if we can work together. I mean, we started kind of putting out in our materials this idea of parents as partners in the child's education. I mean, you mentioned home, your education started at home, and I think the same happened for both of us. And so we should be embracing the parent. Tell them it's not a defensive. You don't have to be defensive. We're here to help. Let's just talk about it, and maybe we find a solution, versus that sort of, okay, we just have to fix the problem, which in my experience of hearing stories on the public school end, sometimes, not everywhere, it's a reactionary. This happened, so we're going to solve it for you. And not really try to see what's the best interests of the kid, of the school, of everybody, so that we can continue, because it's a relationship, I think.
Yeah.
So.
And respecting that the parents are the primary educators of their children and know them best. And I've certainly had to advocate for my own kids in their educational process as well. But it is just, I think that partnership is important, but also it goes both ways.
Right.
The parent also needs to respect the partnership of the school, and understanding that what the school sees 6 hours a day sometimes can be different from what the parent sees at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And being that third party, because I think that's the other thing that comes into play. We all do this probably psychologically, is this is the enemy, right? Or I have a problem. The school is the problem right now, and all of that. And
the fact that we have, somebody in our office that, is that person and provides that kind of support, just says a lot about our commitment to the students and the families to make sure that they have the best experience they can with our Catholic education that we provide here in South Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that there is someone else who can help and can be that third party, may not happen in other places. And that's exciting, I think, for our schools to have. And it's, again, I'm going to put the marketing hat on and say that that's a great offering that we have, that to say we're going to work with you, and it's not a be all end all kind of thing. And so it's not an easy task, obviously,
Sure.
But we're, so we don't envy you in that. But I think, I think our schools are going to benefit from it, and our parents too.
Yeah. One of the topics too, Sarah, that, it's part of your role is safety in our schools, which is a huge topic in education right now, given so many things that have happened in this world. So as you're thinking of your role in the Office of Catholic Education, what do you think of the safety of our schools, and how can we continue to make it better?
Yeah, I think in sometimes Catholic schools can sit on their laurels because we have this idea that, God will bless our school and therefore we're protected from all evil. And I think the school shooting that was a Christian school shook up a lot of Catholic schools in listening to that experience, because it broke that fundamental misunderstanding of the reality of the situation, which is all schools, all churches are vulnerable to threats. And we used to think of those threats as being primarily like weather. We all practiced the tornado drills and covered our head. And one time, our parents were hiding under their desks for nuclear threats and stuff like that. And now we face threats of, intruders, and many of our Catholic schools weren't built in an era where that was a concern. And so they've had to do a lot of renovations in order to protect from intruders. And, my understanding, at least at this point, is that all of our schools have a plan, a safety plan in place, which
let's make that
clear.
Which is necessary. And right now I'm working on a document to help support those safety plans, help provide hopefully some guidance and templates and things to further those safety plans and make sure that they are following what is best practice nationwide for school safety. And there's two facets to that. I mean, there's the physical safety. There's also the mental health of students, which we've seen. I think it's something like 43% of school shooters are students themselves. Now, I want to also be clear that those events are rare, but we have to make sure that student mental health is a priority as well. And so a lot of facets to school safety.
Right now, in New Jersey, we are doing the critical incident mapping in all of the schools, which our Catholic schools are also part of, and they have been, complying with those plans and connecting with the police department, making sure, they are able to support any cases that we may have. May not that be the case, but, we are prepared, and I think, we continue to make emphasis on the importance of safety in our schools, training our principals and training people in our schools so that they are prepared for any emergencies. And I think, that is another testament of our commitment to student safety, and also to make sure that we do our diligence in, improving safety measures for Catholic schools in South Jersey.
And again, having someone in the office that can do that research and can do that plan and can help professionally develop our schools is important.
Throughout the years, I think we've seen, our superintendent, Dr. Bill Watson, has been very strong in making sure that safety is a priority in all of our schools, and continues to develop, those plans. And Sarah here is now, making those even better. So we are very thankful for that.
Since we had two, I would say, serious questions, I want to maybe pivot just slightly for a second to maybe ask a lighter question in that, is there something that you're excited or feel might be a fun part of what you're going to be doing, whether it be within the office as a whole or something you're excited to initiative-wise, that you're looking to do in the office? I know, again, short time, you've only been here a short time, but in terms of what you've had, your experience in the past, and something maybe just you're excited to kind of pursue and might have some fun with.
Sure. I really love mentorship in leadership, and I actually did my dissertation on the experience of new principals. I should say principals in their early career was the actual phrase that I used. So it was principals who had between 2 and 5 years of experience were the ones I interviewed. And I went across four states, 5 dioceses, I think, when I did the study, and found all the common themes, and so I'm looking forward to mentoring other building leaders to the best of my ability. And there are some who've been in leadership longer than me and could probably teach me a few things, I'm sure. And I wouldn't discount that either. But for those who are just getting started, I hope to be able to support them and be a resource. I mean, I had some fabulous leadership mentors too. I didn't mention from Philadelphia was Debbie Berlante was our superintendent for elementary schools for a while. And I always say she saw me when I was invisible. I was a new young administrator and very green. And she saw talent, in me, and I learned so much from her. I think when we talk about listening, I mean, when you would talk to Deb, I think sometimes it could be she listened so well. Like I always say, she said so much in her silence. And sometimes I'd find myself filling the silence a little bit too much. I had to get used to that. But she was an incredible listener. And really took it all in, and also provided a lot of spiritual mentorship for me too. And also in Philadelphia, Chris Momini was Secretary of Education over the superintendents there for a time when they had that model. And he always used this phrase, option thinking. He still does. And every mission has a margin is my favorite phrase that he uses. And Chris, he and I really connected because I like option thinking. I like to think outside the box is another way to say it. And so again, 2 great mentors who were there to support me. And of course, I still had the principal from when I was teaching, Kathy, to support me, when I just needed to call and be like, things are going crazy. What do I do? And I hope to be that for other principals, because I always say they have the hardest job in the diocese.
Yeah.
Yep.
Being a principal, you are responsible for so much. And I mean, I can remember getting the 2:00 alarm phone calls because CYO left the door open, and there I am in my pajamas with the police as they walk through the school and make sure everything is fine. So it can be overwhelming at times, and you really need good people to lean on, and both spiritually and just, technically and practically.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't talk much about your path through education, and how you have a doctorate degree, and I just want to hear your education path, and who was Sarah since the beginning? I asked these deep questions. I'm realizing.
Honestly, I mean, you do every podcast, but this one in particular, you have done a superb job of asking some really good questions.
Lucky me.
Yeah, this is being recorded. Don't forget. So you have to continue this trend. You're gonna start batting 1,000 on these questions now.
Oh my. So I decided to go to a state school for education because I felt like I was getting a state certification, both financially and practically speaking. That made a lot of sense. So I graduated from Kutztown University with my bachelor's in education. And I like I said, I had a minor in reading, actually, like as in reading instruction. So with the focus kind of on early literacy. And my father actually grew up in Kutztown. So my grandfather still had the house there. So I commuted actually back and forth. I didn't live on campus. So I would go back and forth and sometimes land for lunch at the grandparents' house. And honestly, he was in Florida most of the time. It was usually me and some cousin that would be in town, spending the day. But I loved the town of Kutztown. It obviously had a lot of meaning to me. So it was a great 4 years there. And then I ended up doing my master's through the University of Scranton, which is a Catholic college, Jesuit. But I did it remote. So that was kind of, I feel like, the dawn of remote education, for Matt, when it was really started to pick up in popularity.
Right.
And actually, they did a fantastic job. And part of I got my principal certification through that program. So part of that is an internship. Pennsylvania requires that. So I got a lot out of it. Obviously, Kathy was my mentor for part of it. And then I also did some work for Bob Birmingham as part of the internship. And he was the principal of the Catholic school that was actually attached to my parish growing up. So,
there you go.
And so both were phenomenal to support me in that. And so was the School of Education in Scranton. Even though it was distance, it didn't feel like distance so much. And then, but I really liked that. I mean, I had my son, he was an infant, right in the middle of, actually it might've been right at the beginning of that process. And then I went on to get my doctorate, and that was more of a bucket list thing. I got it through Liberty University, and honestly made the choice mostly because finances. Because it was almost, at that time, it was almost completely online. Now it is 100% online. They had what was called a limited residency program at the time. So you had to go down just for 3 classes. I think I ended up actually going down for 4 because I liked it so much.
That's Virginia? Liberty,
Lynchburg,
right?
Virginia, on the western side. And I actually now work for Liberty University as an adjunct professor, and I'm an applied research methodologist there.
We didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just add it to the list.
Goodness. Now we have to add that to the resume. Thing here.
But I will say I was very inspired by my time at Liberty. Now they are historically Baptist, so their roots are Baptist. Yes. They are now more non-denominational. But the culture, especially on campus, it just oozes Christian everything. And they play praise and worship music on the sound system all day long. Like they're just the professors also very faithful and just so very prayerful. And my chair for my dissertation was Cindy Spalding, another great mentor. And now we're colleagues, so that's really cool. She's actually doing most of her work at the University of Lynchburg now, but I think still does some dissertation work for Liberty. But yeah, it was really a fantastic experience. And actually, I was able to bring some of the some of the things back into my leadership in Catholic education, inspired by their approach to Christian education. So
that's wonderful. And, I think, it's just education is a passion for you. And we can see it in, your resume. We can see it, in the way you talk about Catholic schools. And, I think you have found your niche in Catholic education and you're here to stay. So we hope that bingo thing doesn't come true.
You got to the 5, so we're good.
No.
So, tell us just something fun about yourself that people wouldn't know, like normally, like, maybe a Sarah fact that, you would like to share with our listeners.
I feel like sometimes I'm a little too straight-laced. I probably don't do enough fun, or at least some of my friends will tell me sometimes. But I do actually sing in a music ensemble at church, which people are surprised sometimes to hear, and they will say, sing this or sing that. And I say, I only sing Jesus songs. God only gave me the talent to sing that. Everything else sounds bad. So, but yeah, it's actually a contemporary music group and really great. That we have drums and bass and piano.
Wow, I love that.
Professional and semi-professional musicians in the group. And we do live stream from St. Peter Parish for those who are second home bound in our community, but also on the World Wide Web. Anybody wants to see it? Yeah.
Well, we have something in common because I love singing for our Lord, and I've been in my parish choir for a while now. So it's kind of like, one of those things that I love to do.
And I don't, so that's good. So that's one thing I don't. I sing. I know that sing is the highest form of prayer, and I do sing at church, and I do sing in the car, but not for anybody else because it's not good.
I can say I truly feel God when I hear good music and listen to those good songs.
I absolutely agree. It's just you don't want me on the World Wide Web singing is I guess what I'm trying to say.
We may do a test, but not here, people.
As we begin to wrap up, we want to make sure we touch on something that's coming up for our office, and Sarah's experienced before because we've been in different dioceses, but we have.
Let's not forget.
Yes, it's. I always forget to say the full title, so I'm going to say it now. Celebrate Catholic Schools Week, which used to be just Catholic Schools Week when it was 1 week in the year. We now have 2, which is exciting, but. I want to kind of get quick roundtable as we're wrapping up in terms of what you're most excited about for Celebrate Catholic Schools Week. I will say, and I'm not trying to steal anybody's answer, but for me, because of my role, I'm always excited about the events that the schools do and my opportunity to really see them be excited about their education and the things that they do. So when we were having our strategy meeting about it recently in our staff meeting, Dr. Watson said, we know Mike's the free agent of the week. He's just going to be running around. And that excites me, being able to run to all of our different schools and see all the different events. So we'll start with our guest and ask, this will be your first one in our diocese, but in your past diocese and what you've done maybe in your own school, what are you excited about for this week coming up?
Well, I mean, Catholic Schools Week is just, it's party week. I know that's how the kids would describe it, really. And the adults are exhausted by the end of it. Yeah. But it is a really great time to celebrate what is good and true and beautiful about Catholic schools, truly. And sometimes I don't know that we pause to really think about that enough. And it's not just about the dress down days and the fundraisers and the
crazy
service projects and the crazy hat day, the crazy sock day, the crazy whatever. There's so many of them. But it really is about celebrating what's unique about us and special about us.
Agreed.
So I'm excited to see what the schools in the Diocese of Camden do, because we say just as when you've seen one Catholic diocese, you've seen one Catholic diocese, the same is true about schools. When you've seen one Catholic school, you've seen one Catholic school. And so they're all going to have their different cultural flavor. Their school culture is going to really shine in those activities that they're doing across the week. So.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have to say, Mike, I am very excited to visit the schools that I'll be visiting in the coming weeks and kind of like seeing what they're developing for our parents, for our students. I have to say that Catholic Schools Week is very important for me in my role because, I think Catholic Schools Week's done well is a great retention tool for families as well. You do it well, they love the experience. They want to experience it again the following year. They want to stay.
Yes, absolutely. And whether it be Crazy Hat Day or whatever.
And our superintendent is crazy about having to have 5 crazy hats for the next week because he has 5 kids.
This is the dreaded week for him in terms of some of the themes. But we're very excited. We hope our listeners will be excited. Remind them that it is the final week in January leading into February. So I'm going to say, I believe while I quickly check it on my phone here for everyone, I believe it's January. It starts on Sunday, January 28th.
Yes.
And that's a great opportunity to see our Catholic schools in your parishes, because that's usually the first day is to celebrate your parish, and the kids come in their uniforms, and it's great. And then it runs through till Saturday, February 3rd. So we want you to check out your local Catholic school. Check out our Facebook and social media pages.
Where do they go on our website?
So it's southjerseycatholicschools.org. Our Facebook, Instagram are both South Jersey Catholic Schools. So look for preview information. The Catholic Star Herald is going to do a supplement the week before, kind of getting you excited about the different things that are going on in the Catholic schools. We'll have a lot of great ads in there from our schools. So
amazing. And if you have any enrollment related questions and are trying to discern which school is best for you and your family, please do not hesitate to give us a call. And you can call me directly at 856-583-6108.
Yes, well, there you go. So we got our plugs in as well. We want to thank Sarah for coming on and having a wonderful conversation about her role in Catholic schools in general. And thank you, Marianela, as always, for spending an hour with me for chatting. And we'll chat with everyone next week. So thanks so much.
Happy Catholic Schools Week.